Welcome to Nugget 201 with Steve Groman, and today we will be talking about the chalk cliffs of Kansas. In last Saturday's travel and history tip, we took you to Monument Rocks and Little Jerusalem Badlands State Park, and we looked at it as a fun place to go, and I mentioned that we will be doing a nugget on it, and here is that nugget. We found the sign at the Little Jerusalem Badlands State Park.
It says Life on the Rocks Trail. It's an overlook trail. The Badlands are good lands for plants and animals. The land here is called Badlands, which commonly means a region sculpted by erosion. With scant vegetation and fantastically formed hills, the Badlands sounds forbidding, but this area supports a surprising diversity of living things.
Were they sculpted by erosion?
Possibly, but not in the time that they say.
A quick erosion than
Real quick
a
erosion.
long time frame
yeah,
erosion.
Right. It was not a long time frame like they call it.
And we also went out to Monument Rocks. One of the funny things I think is that sometimes this sign says 8 miles and sometimes it says 7 miles, and it reminds me of going to China Date Ranch. 2 miles.
2 miles. Turn the corner, 2 miles. Turn the corner, 2 miles. But it was fun to get there.
Also, besides Monument Rocks, there's also the Castle Rock, Badlands, and this Little Jerusalem, and we're going to talk a little bit about each one. But Monument Rocks is owned by actually the Bonner family, and they're gracious enough to allow people to go on to their site and visit as long as you don't make a problem, which is good.
And they've been at it for a long while.
Yeah, they've been fossil hunting. The gentleman who lives now, his dad used to fossil hunt out there, and here's some old-time pictures that show people out there and school groups visiting and all that. It's just a splendid, lovely place to go to.
And it would be a really good idea for everybody that goes there. Please respect the property, respect the owner's wishes and such, because they are gracious enough to let people to go and visit and walk amongst all of these. We don't want to lose them.
We went out there years ago, and it's been about 17 years since we'd been out there, and we went out there again, and when we went out there the first time, we were the only ones there for a good deal of the time, and all of a sudden some people on ATV showed up, but then when we went the other day, I would consider it crowded, and that's kind of sad because it is a very out-of-the-way location, and it's definitely off and on the beaten path.
The Chalk Pyramids and Monument Rocks are names for the same group of rock outcroppings near US 83 in western Kansas. There are signs at the turnoff, 6 miles of gravel road, perhaps. You can see the rocks in the distance from the highway if you know where to look.
Right, if you're traveling north on US 83, before you get there, if you look off in the distance to the east, you can see them.
And if you don't look off and see them, and you finally see them, you'll see the washing machine.
Yeah, well, we won't tell them about that. If you want to know about the washing machine, listen to the last Saturday travel and history tip, and you'll hear that story.
Funny.
Like the Castle Rock Badlands, the Monument Rocks are on private range land, but thanks to the owners, open to the public. The United States Department of the Interior has designated the Chalk Pyramids as a National Natural Landmark. The 70 feet tall, sedimentary formations of the Niobrara Chalk were created 80 million years ago.
Wow.
When this area was part of a vast inland sea.
It's always an inland sea, isn't it?
So yeah, tell them about
Shallow.
this inland sea.
Start watching for these terminologies. You will see a vast inland sea. Sometimes they'll say a shallow inland sea. Sometimes they'll say a vast shallow sea. I mean, they'll have all kinds of terminologies for this stuff. They never explain where the water came from, and they never explain where the water went. Where did the sea go? It was formed by water, no question about it. But they have to have some vast inland sea because they refused the Bible.
And as we repeat, it's the timing that they have wrong. It was water and it was wind. Castle Rock, which we've gone out to those, they lie east of Monument Rocks. All of these formations are part of what is called the 8 Wonders of Kansas. The Badlands of Kansas, famous for its fossils, is an area of chalk bluffs, chalk flats, and chalk pinnacles. 80 million years ago, this region was an open ocean brimming with calcium-shelled microscopic animals. Giant oysters, sharks, bony fish, and reptiles swimming and flying overhead. The test of trillions of foraminifera fell like snow to the bottom as they died, forming thick, limy ooze, which enveloped the corpses of larger animals. Through time, the ooze was covered by other sediments and pressed into chalk, a soft limestone. Thousands of years of sculpting by the Smoky Hill River have left what you see today. This geological formation is the Niobrara Chalk, named after bluffs of the same chalk on the Missouri River near the mouth of the Niobrara River in northeast Nebraska. And that is taken from the Kansas Department of Wildlife, Parks, and Tourism. What you got to say?
It's all nice, except for the millions of years and such. It's amazing how they talk about this stuff. Snows to the bottom and when they die and form a thick, limy ooze. And to some degree, that stuff is true.
It's got to be doing it pretty fast to envelop these corpses of larger animals.
Right, before they get washed away and torn away or eaten away or rot away. It has to be done rapidly. Everything that takes place is a rapid thing that takes place, or it can't happen at all.
So they've got reptiles swimming and flying overhead. We've got pterodactyls. We've got plesiosaurs. We've got bony fish. We've got sharks. Giant oysters, which indicates obviously a pre-flood oyster if it's huge. All of this can be explained clearly through Noah's flood. But what's sad is that it is evolutionists that have control over most of the information that goes out. And when we take you to the Fick Fossil Museum in this upcoming Saturday Travel and History Tip, and then in Nugget 202, we go into detail about these bony fish and the sharks and the swimming reptiles, because we talk about those as we go through the Fossil Museum there in Oakley. Castle Rock was actually, it's not as exciting as Monument Rocks, but it is really a little distance to go. It's a lot of fun. Just park and stay somewhere in Oakley and go visit both of these sites.
Monument Rocks, also chalk pyramids, are a series of large chalk formations in Gove County, Kansas, rich in fossils. The formations were the first landmark chosen by the U.S. Department of the Interior as a national natural landmark.
Well, that's cool.
That is really neat. The chalk formations reach a height of up to 70 feet and include formations such as buttes and arches. The carbonate deposits were laid down during the Cretaceous period in what was then Western Interior Seaway, which, that's what they always say there, isn't it?
That's what they call
that. It's always interior, yeah. Which split the continent of North America into two landmasses. They are estimated to have formed 80 million years ago. Who estimates that? I think everybody just keeps repeating it, quite frankly.
I think they do. Well, we keep repeating what we say.
That's exactly right.
It was Noah's flood that created all this, and it is a result of sin. That's why everything was killed.
It's dead, yeah. But
God destroyed everything on this earth. Plants, animals, and everyone except for the 8 souls that got on the ark.
Yes. And it's obviously done by water, and we have the account thousands of years before we have the evidence. A couple of universities did a survey, and they said that, everybody heard Kansas is flat as a pancake, but actually they came up to the conclusion it's flatter than a pancake.
And it's not the flattest state.
And it's not, it's the 7th flattest state. That's pretty wild. But you look at these formations and wow, they jut up. Well, did they jut up or did the other stuff wash out is the bigger question. And everything is obviously washed out with water.
Well, the Smoky Hill River did not erode these and whittle these down. That just doesn't even make sense.
No.
Doesn't even make sense, but they are loaded
with
fossils. But it is
cool.
Take a vacation to western Kansas, stay in Oakley, and drive down to Castle Rock, to Monument Rocks, the Little Jerusalem Badlands State Park. And there's a little bit more information we want to talk to you about. At Little Jerusalem Badlands State Park, it showcases a mile-long stretch of 100-foot-tall spires and cliffs of eroded Niobrara chalk, a layer of rock deposited about 85 million years ago. We got 70, we got 85.
Yeah, even their own signs are different.
Niobrara chalk was formed by sediment that settled at the bottom of an inland ocean called the Western Interior Seaway, which covered most of central North America roughly 140 to 70 million years ago during the Cretaceous period. The sediment became compressed over time, and the seaway floor was lifted by the same tectonic shifting that formed the Rocky Mountains. Exposed to the weather, the chalk sediment eroded into dramatic spires, cliffs, and ravines over millions of years. Sand, gravel, and wind-blown silt, called less, covering surrounding areas and sand dunes in the Smoky Hill River Valley, were deposited in the later Pleistocene between approximately 2.6 million and 11,700 years ago, and the Holocene epochs between approximately 11,700 years ago and the present. But do you see how they're spanning an enormous amount of time when they're talking about they're going from 140 million years ago when the sea was here down to 11,700 years ago.
Right.
They're bringing it all and they're spreading it out all over that length of time. How can they do
and
that?
Of course,
How can they prove that?
No, there's no way to know that. There is absolutely no way to verify that. They're just throwing out stories.
We make a lot more sense with that there was Noah's flood around 4,400 years ago, wiped out everything, and what we see today is a result of that.
And again, we have the account, the Bible, thousands of years before we see the evidence.
If you trust the Bible, it is obvious it's right there. We have God's word on what happened.
Right.
But it is a beautiful place. Unfortunately, you can no longer walk down through there as it's become an official state park. And this sign repeats the same thing, whether it's on their website or out on the signage.
This one was a great sea.
It was.
It wasn't a vast inland sea, or it wasn't a shallow inland sea. It was a great sea.
But it's fun just to see the inconsistencies among the signs.
The time and the description.
Ancient giant clams and oysters are the most common fossil in these badlands. I would have loved to have seen one of those, but we didn't. Giant clams and oysters. Pre-flood. Wow, you'd have to have a lot of cocktail sauce for giant oysters, wouldn't you? But you couldn't eat oysters and clams before the flood.
Well, no, but right after the flood, supposed to be okay.
Yeah, they were still there, right, and big. And this sign talked about the creative handiwork of water and time.
I think it's creative handiwork of God.
It's his flood. Even during something that he used to destroy this earth, what we see today is still beautiful.
Absolutely.
We want you to see these signs and to see the distinctions and see the inconsistencies. However, it was the handiwork of water and time, just not much time.
Not as much as they say.
No. We do talk about this a lot in Living Proof, Rock Solid Proof, Noah's Big Boat and the Flood, and After the Flood. When we were over at those chalk cliffs, do you remember this guy?
I do. We met a friend here, huh?
He's a rattlesnake. We
Yeah.
see rattlesnakes quite often out in the
We
desert.
see them a lot. We see them a lot. We let them do their thing. We're in their territory. They're not in ours.
And we just want you to realize that when you are in
Be
these
careful.
areas, be respectful of these guys. They are out there.
Yes.
Pay attention to yourself and your children.
A lot of things can stick, sting, and bite.
Yep, can be deadly. All right, well, I hope you've enjoyed this. Again, we will be talking about the Fick Fossil Museum in the upcoming Saturday Travel and History Tip. And in Nugget 202, we will talk about those fossils that we saw at that museum in Oakley.
Awesome.
All right, well, thank you.